Philo's past comes to light, the Darkasher's master is finally revealed, and two leaders come together. Welcome, everyone, to Carnival Row.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
And we're back for the season finale of Carnival Row. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and for sticking with us all season long. Tonight, we are breaking down, as I said, episode 8, the season finale, The Gloaming. I'm Veronica Valencia, and joining me today, you introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. I'm Vito Scutti. It's good to be back.
It's been great to have you all season, Vito.
Thank you, V. It's been wonderful to be hosting this with you.
So excited. Into this episode, we're going to be talking all about Philo learning who his dad was, the Darkasher and Piety, as well as Jonah and Sophie, an unexpected partnership in Parliament, as well as Philo and Vignette finally able to be together, but maybe in the not best way. And of course, Vito will also take us on a walk down Mythical Row. But before we get into any of that, Vito, okay, there's a lot, and I need to know what you thought about it all.
This was one of my favorite season finales that I've seen on any show so far that I've watched. I'm not gonna lie, everything just tied together. It felt so satisfying. I've been telling this to V the entire time that we've been seeing each other today. Everything tied together, and yet not tightly enough for me not to want to continue watching into season 2. I am so excited about Philo, about Vignette, about Breakspear, about Piety, Jonah, Sophie. I just love all of them. How do you feel at the end of this season?
This was I agree with you. It was a very satisfying season finale, and I like how there were some parts where they tricked us. They were like, oh, you think this is going to happen? Just kidding, it didn't. So that was a very fun twist. I do have to admit that there were a few storylines that I wasn't disappointed in, but I was very confused by, because I think they weren't wrapped up completely, and I was wondering if they would continue them on in another season, but I'm not sure, and we can definitely get into that. But overall, super satisfying. I'm really liking where this is going. A great cliffhanger for a season 2.
It's gonna be so wild for them to do the commentary that they are in the upcoming season, I think, because it's a lot to do with, like, this feels like it's starting to get into, like, fascist area. And I'm a little concerned about that, because they're starting to get into kind of like, this is like a camp for the Fae, and they are quarantined into this area. And I think the name Carnival Row is going to get a much different definition after this season.
Tainted
Definitely
definition.
A tainted definition. I mean, I think we're going to see a lot of wonder on this road, and not in a good way. We immediately see one of the Fae die. It was Flurry, right?
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
Flurry
getting shot out of the sky. But way, way, way before that, this episode just continuously just smacked me in the face with things that I just could not stop watching. I was watching this all last night, and I needed to go to bed, and I started into it. I refused. Absolutely refused. Ugh.
I loved how this episode started. So, like, the last episode was like, oh, Philo, this is your dad. And then it goes right into basically kind of in Breakspear introducing the past to Philo and reconnecting the dots and giving information that he had been missed his entire time. I have to admit, Vito, when we were talking beforehand, you said you kind of saw this coming, right?
I sort of saw Breakspear. As soon as the mention of the dad coming up started happening, I was thinking, oh man, it's got to be somebody already introduced. And we had talked previously in episodes saying that, like, I don't think the politics is going to be left out of the main story, because they have been parallel a lot, but they didn't have a lot of crossover. I didn't know where it would quite cross over, but I'm very glad that it crossed over in the way that it did, because I love Breakspear as Philo's father, and I was really tense there for a second in that beginning scene. How did you feel while he had the gun to his head?
Obviously, I didn't think that anything was going to happen. Philo's a main character. He kind of needs to stick around. But I was really taken aback by his approach to the whole situation. In the last episode, when Breakspear kind of learned, the Darkasher also killed a Fae, as soon as he had the moment of, like, Fae died? Ashley? What? That's the moment I put it all together. He's the dad. Piety is doing all these murders to get back at him, or to get for her own thing, trying to protect something, whatever. But I immediately knew Piety was the person. But There's so much in this show that's saying you have to hate the Fae, and granted, we do know that Breakspear is kind of he's more of a supporter, but because we had only really seen him in that role in Parliament, it could have just been a neutral stance.
I agree with that.
And so it was a very interesting and kind of nice to see this episode of how heartbroken he was when he found out Aisling was dead, and he thought it was his son.
And how empathetic he was. Just seeing how much empathy he had towards both Philo and Aisling, the whole memory of it all, how much you could feel his pain and how much shame he had at the time when him and Aisling were together. I thought the reveal of that was so beautifully done, with the reveal of him having this affair with Aisling in this summer home, but revealing that his fathers were so hard on him, were so brutal towards the people that he knew, that in his opinion, for Aisling, this was better for her. Do you think that he had any other choice in that? Do you think it even matters?
I do. I think, and Philo even says it himself, like, oh, it's a story I know so well. So basically father like son in that sense. I think he kind of did what he thought he needed to do in order to keep her safe in the moment. Was it a good choice? Was it the choice that anyone would have wanted, kind of how Philo made the choice with Vignette? I would say no, but I do think he did what he had to do in the moment in order to protect her, because he's saying, my dad is not a powerful man, but he has powerful and scary friends.
And I'm also not going to lie, I teared up a bit at the end of that scene when Philo was going into the carriage and Breakspear was like sending him off, because it was so touching to see Philo finally get a connection with somebody that he cared about. That ultimately, even though the relationship was lost for so long, I see so many times in stories this idea of like the child bearing hatred towards a parent figure that they never really had, but this kind of went down a different road, and it made me feel really good about that.
I love that. I see it too in quite a bit of storytelling where there is the resentment towards a father who maybe never acted like a father. I shouldn't even say necessarily father, a parent. A parent who never treated their child like a parent would, have that kind of care and love. And obviously Philo never knew his dad in this case. But I think Philo saw a lot of himself in his father kind of making the same kind of decisions because of how society tells them they need to live. But I liked that there was kind of this mutual understanding of like, I respect you. Maybe I don't love you because I just met you, but respect for each other in a sense. And I was really looking forward to kind of seeing this paternal relationship progress.
Well, it doesn't get much time to now, does it?
No, which, when Quill, quote unquote, killed Breakspear, I was very nervous because I'm like, no, I wanted to see them together. But then we find out, oh, he kind of lived. Just kidding. Piety kills him.
Yeah, and we get it. It is also awful, almost, that Quill was sent to do this right at the moment that he was, because it was an opportunity for things to be pushed forward in the direction of acceptance in the Row, and it was all kind of blown to ash with this idea of extremism. I mean, ultimately we see Quill does what he believes in, which I guess I don't have a real solid opinion on the idea of whether it was right or wrong. It was just what they did. It was the action of what they did, and extremism was ultimately caused by violence and extremism on the other side. It was the idea of them being hated that made them desire to hate. And of course, that's such a complicated discussion that obviously we won't be able to cover fully in this discussion, but very interesting to see where they'll end up going with this in further seasons. I think it'll end up boiling over, but I
think this is really going to be the big thing of season 2, like, because Quill and kind of this uprising group, this radical organization, started very slowly throughout the end of the season, and I feel like this is going to be a big plot point in the next season. But let's actually also kind of get into Darkasher and Piety. I have a lot of questions about this.
I loved the death of the Darkasher. I thought it was super. I almost expected it to drag out more. I mean, obviously it did drag out a little bit more, but I thought it was done when he cut off the head. But I also remembered back to the episode where it was just separated into the little mealworm thing was separated into pieces.
Mole rat?
Yeah, and I just wonder if it like briefly disconnected Piety from the Darkasher?
That's what it seemed like it did, because she was fully connected. Her eyes did that changed colors kind of thing, like she was controlling it. And as soon as the head got cut off, she did seem to like disconnect. Maybe it's the fact that, you know, she couldn't see through his eyes because he lost his head and he needed a moment to regroup, and that's just kind of the way the magic works. I actually have a few questions about this, and I want to get your opinion on it, Vito. So one of the main questions I had in the beginning, Philo made a point in one of the previous episodes that he thought his father was behind the murders and he was using the livers to track Philo down, which that's basically what Piety was doing. She was taking the livers from all of these people to try and find out who Philo was. But the thing that made me curious was, you know, why didn't Breakspear's liver directly go to Philo? Like, that was a big memory, and I felt like that should have immediately led him to him, but it still was a wonder of, like, no, it told Piety about Vignette, not Philo.
I mean, I think Piety did know... Piety did see the memory of Philo and their location in the memory, but she was not able to see where he was at that exact moment. I think it shows specifically visions, probably memories, when you look at... It's basically seeing through the eyes of the beholder. That's what I expect from the way that they're presenting this. I think the visions that they're doing is specifically towards the consciousness of the person that it's in, being that it's a piece of their body coming out. They can only see so much of what they see. So I don't think it directly led to Philo because she didn't know what he looked like. They even said that. Piety didn't know what he looked like at the end of the day. I think Philo says that in the jail cell.
At the same time, she didn't know what any of the people she killed looked like, this is one of the things that I was talking about at the beginning of the episode, where some storylines I felt like they just kind of wrapped up, but they were still missing pieces, so they weren't complete. The liver thing I would like to know more about, as well as how did Piety create the Darkasher? Clearly she didn't have the Haruspex creator, otherwise the Haruspex would have known all along. Also, sorry, I'm just coming at you with questions. But
no, it's okay. We're also dealing with some technical difficulties right now. For some reason, the stream is freezing up. Jonathan, I don't know if you were aware of that, but we are getting a lot of chats saying that we are frozen pretty much in the same spot. Gotcha, no problem. So, hold on. I suppose we should just continue the conversation, and if we need to go back, we can. Okay. So, continuing on in the conversation, your question was again?
My question was two questions. My question was, how did Piety create the Darkasher? I would assume she would go with the Haruspex because it's the only face she really trusts, but then again, the Haruspex would know, and it also wouldn't kill her.
I think she is more powerful than even the series has presented her to be so far. We see it in the way that the Haruspex talks about it, in that she came to the Haruspex for advice. She was always interested in her scientific research. She was always interested in trying to find more about everything that was happening with the Fae. And I think this is kind of revealing human capacity for the understanding of science rather than magic. I mean, magic has kind of been presented to us in a scientific way with everything that happens with how the Haruspex is able to see visions, is able to put potions together. I mean, even when Philo comes in to see how these creations are made, she puts together basically a bunch of different vials and a bunch of different chemicals, and we see it with sodium sulfate, with the light bulb. So I think she just had a knack for science and therefore was able to kind of put two and two together in this instance. And I find that super fascinating, because when science and magic come together, that's the style of stories that I really love, because it kind of shows that magic and science, they're both complicated and they can both bring to life these really insane ideas. So I think Piety is just super powered, and if she's not even the smartest witch or Haruspex, I guess she's not a witch or a Haruspex. I guess she's kind of a witch, kind of.
Well, that's what I'm curious about, is because she was never presented that way. So that was kind of what confused me.
Yeah, I guess being kind of that like mad scientist. We got very Frankenstein vibes from her, which I really loved.
Oh, and she was talking in like the in between.
Absolutely. And when we ended up seeing how she kind of had that underground lab later on in the episode,
So weird.
The design was so cool, the sewer design, and it makes a lot of sense because that's where the Darkasher was. I honestly, like, I didn't expect the Darkasher to just be right there standing and look at everything.
Well, that's kind of, well, I guess it makes total sense once you see it, but it's also not something that I put together until I kind of saw it. I would assume that it lays dormant because that's what it is. It's connected to its master, and if its master is not essentially telling it to go out and find someone, it would lay dormant kind of in that secret room.
Yeah, but it was dormant the entire time. You would think that something that had so many animals would have more of a sensory idea other than something just like quickly hitting a thing and it waking up and being like, oh, there it is. Or like, but I guess it doesn't really have any senses when it's dormant. It's kind of weird that she has this partial connection to be able to basically kind of take over at any moment. It's almost like something is hidden away in the back of her mind, kind of like a split consciousness. And I mean, we see more of that when the actual final fight happens and she's like moving while also the Darkasher is moving, and we get to see that it is like a split consciousness. But I don't know the weight of all of that. I don't know how it affects her. Obviously, killing the Darkasher does not affect her that much, but it does definitely give her a bad headache.
And so I like how at the very least it also was revealed, what Piety was actually doing. She was basically trying to find Philo to kill him because she believed in the prophecy that it needed to be Jonah and it was going to be her life in riches, but Philo obviously put a plan in that. But what was interesting too was how she basically learned about the whole affair to begin with, because she got some kind of blackmail note, which leads into my next conversation of Sophie and Jonah.
First of all, ew. Second of all,
yeah. Oh my God, that I didn't see coming at all. And I was just like, oh, okay, moving on from that.
But it also was really funny how his mother house Piety was just like, you don't think that the driver would tell me that? Did you just it's so Jonah doesn't have any tact at all. And just if anything, he's attracted to that in Sophie, the fact that she was able to do all of this kind of in the background and have nothing bother her. And having that note made, how long ago was that? They even said he got that note, 5 years ago? How long has she been planning this?
Well, that's what I was thinking too, was because she obviously has been collecting information from her dad, who she kind of is basically saying was too weak to ever use against his opponent. So she had been planning this for a while, but my question also lingering too, and this is another thing that was kind of one of those lingering storylines, was, okay, so she wrote this letter. But what was she hoping would come of? Like, was she obviously she wasn't expecting something like a Darkasher to go out and start killing people. But also, even though she wrote this letter, it was so vague in the sense, hi, here's blackmail you can use. I was a fae who had an affair with the Chancellor and I bore him a son, basically. It still doesn't tell me how they were able to pinpoint that it was Aisling.
I don't know. I really, it's hard to say because she probably, this is what I figure. If we see all of the ramblings of the past of Longerbane and the talks, we see that Sophie talks about having heard her father gather this information, and she was able to gather from that not only was it their family's opponent, but it was also something very chaotic in her family's opponent's life. And maybe it wasn't exactly Aisling, but she knew that it was somebody who was a fae. She knew that they bore a child that was half fae, and she probably didn't need to do much else besides that. The only part that she left out was her handwriting, which obviously we can see that what's his name?
Jonah.
Yeah, Jonah, and not only that, but his assistant now, the theater guy.
Millworthy.
Oh my gosh,
You're
Millworthy.
at a blank here.
I'm so bad with names. I'm so sorry, guys. We get to see that Millworthy is immediately able to identify it not as her. And you come to think, if anybody in higher power was able to talk to any fae at all, ever, about anything that they know, they would have been able to get to the bottom of this. Longerbane didn't think about that. Longerbane didn't, I don't know. It really frustrates me to kind of see all of these politics, like, every single person missed one little thing and it just caused chaos, but Sophie knew it would. and that's really smart of her.
She's a mastermind. Her and Piety I would say they were the biggest masterminds in this entire series, just how they were able to execute their plans. And real quick, I kind of want to get your opinion on basically Jonah siding with Sophie, basically, that now they're going to go to war. And I honestly think it might not, and I think it's just, he's not necessarily saying he hates Faye, but I think now he harbors a resentment towards them because of what they're doing and his dad.
I think I think that Jonah doesn't even understand what he's doing right now. He's kind of going with
I think he's very lost.
Yeah, I think not only is he lost, but he's really just vying for anything that will help him. And I think he's afraid of having her as an enemy more than he is as an ally. Because at this point, with no direction, I think ultimately he's going to come back and try and stop her from becoming this like
power hungry
this
ruler,
chaotic ruler. I at least hope so, because I can still see good in Jonah. I don't know if you see good in Jonah.
I see good in Jonah. One of the biggest themes I kind of got from these last two episodes was like a theme of freedom. Breakspear wanted to be free as he was writing Vignette's kind of like get out of jail card. He was like, I'm going to give her what my father never gave me, freedom. Sophie kind of talks about Jonah getting freedom, being released from the rule and the journey and the path of his parents.
And now his parents are both dead, like she suspected.
But also Philo finally being able to be free and being able to be who he is and not having to hide behind a mask. The last two episodes, I really got that sense of theme. So I definitely see Jonah still being good. I kind of can see where you're going with that, Vito, and that like he'll realize he'll mistakes and now he'll have to fix them.
And it'll be way too late. I mean, it's already too late in the last episode. As soon as this episode ends, we can see by everybody being shoved into the row, it is way too late for anything good to happen in this.
All right. Now I kind of want to talk about Imogen and Agreus too, just very quickly, because they, their big thing happened last season. So we basically see Ezra finds out about them, and he's crazy. He's the worst character.
I can't wait to see him die in season 2.
But it's just so weird because I kind of don't. I think it's a mixture of things. I think he's afraid of the scandal and the embarrassment. I think it's just the fact that his sister, of all people, is now involved with a fawn, someone that he truly hates. And I still think it's jealousy that Agreus is so much better than him in every single way.
I also think it's setting us up for a very interesting plot of maybe he's going to go mad and possibly become a murderer on the row himself. If he loses all of the money that I expect him to lose after the loss of Agreus and Imogen, he's going to be left with nothing. And if we have seen anything in the series so far, when you are driven to nothing, you are driven to insanity.
See, I don't know if he would start a random killing spree on the row. I think his vendetta is Imogen and Agreus. We kind of see that at the end of the season too. He's like, there's like the narration, I'm gonna hunt you or I'm gonna find you, and he's looking out to the water. So he is determined to get to them in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, but I just wonder how desperate this man is going to get to find them, because we see Agreus and Imogen fly off to God knows where, and I'm sure they'll be back. I don't think we're going to have a whole other season with them either not being present or being in a totally different land, because covering two different cities at the same time is going to be terrible.
They might get stopped on the seas and realize they're from the Berg, and the Berg is basically telling anyone who is mythical to come back, and I think they're going to get stopped on the sea and have to be forced to go back to the Berg, and that's how they end up there again.
Yeah, I mean, we see that happen with every single other character. I was surprised it didn't happen to them, but I'm interested to see what they go out and find.
Yeah. So we, like you were saying, Vito, we saw all of the Fae and Fawn basically being stopped. They're not allowed to leave the Berg. And this is where we go into Philo and Vignette, because Vignette is basically now, all of the Fae, all of the myths are now quarantined on Carnival Row. And it was shocking, like Fae just getting shot out of the sky. But also, I like that Philo, like I said, is finally feeling free, and he's like, you want to know what? I am Fae. And he goes to Vignette.
I didn't expect him to say that. I really didn't. I didn't expect him to go with her. I thought he was going to work on the outside, and that was actually mentioned by somebody in our comments earlier.
Well, no, I agree. Yeah. I agree. It was 50-50. Because they had rekindled their romance, I could definitely see that at this point he doesn't want to leave her again, because that would just be torturous. But I always thought his mindset was, it's better for me to hide my secret so that I can try and help you from the outside, because they have because right now I have an in and I can get stuff done. If he becomes a Fae, he loses that opportunity. So it really, for me, could have gone 50-50.
To be fair, I don't think he really had a choice much in the matter because everybody on the outside already knew. Everybody, like Dombey, everybody that was part of the police force already knew that he was not human. So I guess he didn't really have any other choice.
Yeah. But I'm just happy that they're finally together again and that he chose to be with the people who accept him and who made him comfortable. It was a lot that happened in this episode.
So much.
And honestly, we're ready for a second season, and we know we're getting a second season. But Vito, you actually have news that's extra exciting.
I have very extra exciting news.
AfterBuzz TV News.
Season 3 and 4 are in discussion. That's the news. It's already in discussion for a season 3 and 4, which means we're not even going to see the end of the entire thing in season 2. We're going to see possibly season 3, possibly season 4. They've been in talks about it for the past few months already, with Netflix already making the season 2 confirmed before the show was even released for season 1. Amazon, thank you. I'm not surprised by this, but gosh, am I delighted because I could use 2 more seasons of this, and that's the news.
That is super exciting. I'm glad that we have a confirmation. Now we know we have something to look forward to. All right, Vito, can you take us on a walk down our last episode of Mythical Row? Right now.
For the last walk down Mythical Row, I will bring you to the most treacherous, the most delusional, the most insanely scary creature in this entire show. Humans. Humans are from the continent of Masogia. They're heavily industrialized, and their advances in technology have fueled territorial ambitions that have now reached far beyond their native continent, which we still don't really get to see their native continent. They have a diverse variety of cultures and belief systems. In the Berg, their primary human religion is the Martyrite faith. They are nomadic and tribal for over 1,000 years before they began to gather in cities, and we don't get to see much of their history before the Row, but perhaps we will see more about the humans in the upcoming 3 future seasons. How scary.
Future seasons.
Well, thank you guys for taking this trip down the Mythical Row. I will hopefully be able to walk you down this way once again come next season.
I'm so excited that we can say there will be a second season, and hopefully we can be back for it. But until then, that's just about it for season 1 of Carnival Row. Again, thank you everyone for joining us, for joining Vito and myself along this journey. I want to give a quick shout out to everyone in the chat. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, ER's Grandpa, Ivan, Billie Jean Girl 24, Channels, and Renji. Thank you all so much for joining us all season long. You've been great. Again, if you're on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Stay involved in the conversation wherever you are. And if you're on iTunes, please give us a 5-star rating because 1 through 4 do not work. Vito, where can the fans find you on social media?
If you want to find me on social media, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at vscutti. That's at vscutti.
And I'm Veronica Valencia. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at it's me, Veronica_V. Again, thank you everyone for a fantastical season of coverage on Carnival Row, and we cannot wait for season 2. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.